The kettle clicked off just as I reached for my coffee mug. I didn't hear Holden come in. One moment I was pouring water over the grounds like I'd done every morning for 30 years. The next, he was standing by the counter, arms crossed, a manila envelope in his hand. "You have 72 hours to get your stuff out," he said flatly. "I own this house now." I froze mid-pour. At first I thought it was a joke, some cruel, tone-deaf attempt at humor. But he didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. Just pushed the envelope across the counter toward me like he was handing over a pizza receipt. I didn't touch it. I just stared at his face, his cold, unreadable face, and tried to find the boy I raised. "You're serious?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded almost impatiently. "Carly's family is coming in next week. We need the space. It's already done." My hands were still wrapped around the coffee mug, but it no longer felt warm. He went on talking about timelines, logistics, starting fresh. I didn't register most of it. My mind had gone blank, like a chalkboard wiped clean mid-lesson. Only one phrase remained written in permanent ink. "I own this house now." The very house I built with his father. The floors I'd scrubbed after Holden's fevers. The hallway where we hung his preschool art. All of it now being cleared to make room for someone else's family. He looked at me like he expected a fight, like he wanted me to raise my voice, cry, plead, but I didn't give him that. I didn't give him anything. I turned off the kettle, rinsed out the mug, and walked past him. In my room, I pulled a suitcase from the closet. My fingers trembled only once when I passed the photo of his father on the dresser. Then I zipped it open, folded the first blouse, and started packing. The suitcase lay open on the bed, half filled, while my thoughts spilled into places I hadn't touched in years. After Robert died, it was just me and Holden. He was 11. I was 37, too numb to grieve properly, too busy trying to keep us both afloat. I took the night shifts because they paid extra, missed Christmas mornings because someone had to cover the ER. Holden used to wait up for me, curled on the couch with a blanket and a plate of toast. I kept the house running on grit, coffee, and prayer. Mortgage bills didn't care that I was widowed. Neither did the roof when it started leaking. I patched it. I painted walls with my own hands. Every corner of this house holds a piece of me and of Robert. And when Holden asked for help to start that marketing business in Denver, I didn't hesitate. I pulled money from the pension fund, told myself I'd rebuild it later. I didn't need much, just enough to keep the lights on and a warm cup at the end of the day. He promised I'd be proud of him. I was. Even when he stopped coming home as often, even when his calls became texts, I kept the porch light on. I told myself he was building a life, and I had helped lay the first stone. I never thought I was giving too much. Mothers don't count like that. We just keep going. But now I see it. Every dollar I gave, every shift I worked while my legs burned under compression socks. It wasn't seen as love. It was seen as leverage, as something he could file away until it became convenient to forget. From the window, I could see the yard where Holden used to play in the sprinklers. Now it looked like just another patch of grass. No laughter, no boy with muddy knees, only silence and a clock ticking towards 72 hours. I reached for my phone. There was someone I needed to call. Eloise answered on the second ring, her voice still scratchy from sleep. I didn't apologize for the hour. I just said, "Do you still have a copy of that form Holden brought over a few months back? The one he said was for refinancing?" She didn't even hesitate. "I'll be there in 20. 22 minutes later, she stood in my kitchen in pajama pants and a windbreaker, paperwork already in hand. I made us coffee out of habit, though mine stayed untouched on the counter. I couldn't swallow anything past the lump in my throat. She spread the documents out on the dining table like a crime scene. Her eyes moved fast. Her fingers tapped the paper as she traced every line of legalese. Then she froze. "Bernice," she said, tapping a section near the bottom, "this isn't a refi, it's a conveyance of ownership, a partial title transfer." I didn't respond. She kept reading, her voice rising. "He told you this was to lower the mortgage rate, but right here it names him as joint owner, which means with your consent, he could file to assume full control." My stomach turned. I remembered that day. Holden had shown up with a folder and a pen, said he was taking care of the hard stuff so I could enjoy retirement without worrying about rates or lenders. I'd just come home from the doctor. My knees were aching, and I hadn't had lunch. I signed because I trusted him, because I'm his mother. Eloise sat down hard in the chair across from me. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Bernice. This was planned." I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared at the spot where he used to sit as a boy, swinging his legs under the table, laughing at nothing. "I need to see the originals," Eloise said, softer now. "Anything you've got in writing, even the old deed." I nodded and stood. There was a box in my bedroom closet I hadn't touched in years. I opened it slowly, brushing past photo albums and cards with faded ink until I found a manila envelope near the bottom. The envelope was thick with dust and years. I carried it back to the table where Eloise waited, and together we slid the papers free. Some were yellowed, some brittle, but the one we needed was there, the original deed, and the documents Holden had brought me months ago. I spread them out, heart hammering. My husband Robert always said, "Never sign anything without a witness and your full initials. People don't just twist words, they twist silence." He was meticulous that way. Every paper in our life had been neatly labeled, filed, duplicated. I used to tease him for it. Now I was grateful. I traced the signature lines slowly. On the document Holden had filed with the county, my name was there. But something was off. I scanned to the bottom right corner where the second verification line was supposed to be. Blank. I checked again. No initials, no witness, no notary seal. Just Holden's signature and a rushed copy of mine. My hands were trembling now, but for a different reason. Eloise leaned in, her voice low. "He filed it without completing the full execution. That makes it contestable, maybe even void." Something in me stirred, something steady. I didn't speak. I just stood, went to the drawer beside the fridge, and pulled out a yellow notepad. On the front, in Robert's neat handwriting, was our old attorney's name, Carolyn Latimer, Elder Law. "I want to talk to her," I said. By noon, I had an appointment scheduled. Carolyn's assistant had squeezed me in. "Bring everything," she said, "and make sure no one else knows you're coming." After Eloise left, I began documenting. I pulled receipts from drawers, printed statements from my bank account, every appliance, every repair, every tax bill I had paid since Robert died. I listed them all. This wasn't just about staying in my home anymore. It was about making sure they didn't erase me from it. I only stopped for coffee and a few bananas. I wasn't in the mood to cook, but the silence in the house made me crave small, familiar errands, something to fill the space Holden's words had left behind. I turned into the produce aisle, mind already drifting, when I heard a voice I knew too well, high-pitched, a little nasal, always with an edge of performance. "Carly." She hadn't seen me. I froze behind a small display of red potatoes as she leaned in closer to the woman beside her, both of them laughing over plastic containers of pre-washed greens. "She still lives there?" the friend asked. Carly scoffed. "For now. Holden gave her the 72-hour notice yesterday. Honestly, it's long overdue. That place reeks of old ointment and depression." The friend laughed. "Gross." Carly rolled her eyes. "Seriously, once the old lady's out, I'm gutting it. Open concept, new floors, finally get rid of those creepy framed baby photos in the hallway. It's practically ours already." I didn't hear the rest. I didn't need to. I backed away from the cart, my hands still curled around its handle. No tears came, no trembling lip, just a kind of cold that settled over me like frost on glass, clear, sharp, and quiet. She didn't know I was there. Neither of them did. I left the cart in the middle of the aisle, turned, and walked straight out of the store. I didn't look back. At the car, I sat with my keys in my lap, staring out at the cracked parking lot. I felt foolish for still holding on to hope, for thinking maybe they didn't know what they were doing, that Holden was being pressured or confused. But they knew. They knew exactly what they were taking from me. That night, I didn't unpack the groceries. Instead, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out the fireproof lockbox Robert had once insisted we keep. Inside, beneath insurance papers and birth certificates, was the original land deed. The next morning, I went to the bank right when they opened. I didn't bother with makeup or earrings, just tied my hair back and grabbed Robert's old key, the small brass one with a red tag that hadn't left the drawer since he passed. The clerk led me to the vault without fuss. My name was still on the record, untouched. I signed the access log with a hand steadier than I expected. Inside the quiet of the vault, I turned the key and lifted the lid. Robert never trusted digital records. He liked things printed, notarized, tucked into real folders. "Paper doesn't crash," he used to say, "and no one hacks a lockbox with a pen." Right on top was the deed, not the house deed Holden had manipulated, but another one older and heavier in its implications. It was for the land, the plot beneath our house, signed, dated, and placed into trust under my name only. Robert had done it just a year before his final stroke. A note clipped to the corner in his handwriting read, "Keep this safe, just in case someone forgets who laid the first brick." I sat there in the vault, holding that deed like it was oxygen. Holden may have filed for the house, but the land beneath it, the foundation itself, was mine. Legally, irrevocably, mine. He could redecorate. He could swap light fixtures. But without the ground it stood on, he was building on sand. I smiled. Not with triumph, not with bitterness. It was the first smile I'd allowed myself since he stood in my kitchen and told me to leave. Back at home, I scanned the deed and emailed a copy to Carolyn, the lawyer. I also sent it to Eloise with a single line, "Let's move." Then I opened the closet, pulled out a roll of colored tape, and began tagging everything in the house that I'd bought with my own money, one by one, room by room. This wasn't revenge, this was inventory. Holden had left for a weekend trip with Carly, something about wedding tasting menus and a vineyard in Boulder. He didn't say goodbye, just a text. "Be out by Monday. We'll handle the rest." That was fine by me. By 8 a.m. Saturday, the moving truck pulled into the driveway. 3 men stepped out, young, polite, and fast. I handed them the list I'd prepared, every item marked with the same color-coded tape I'd used the night before. The TV in the living room, bought after my second knee surgery when I was recovering on the couch alone. The washer and dryer, purchased with the bonus I got my final year in nursing. Bookshelves Robert built with our son when he was 12, but I paid for the lumber, and they never belonged to Holden. And my coffee table. The one piece I swore I'd never leave behind. Dark oak, solid, bought with my first tax return after Robert died. Each item had a story. Not one of them included Carly. The movers wrapped everything with care, no questions asked. I offered them bottled water from the fridge, the last thing still cold in a kitchen that no longer felt like mine. They thanked me. They worked hard. They didn't make small talk, and I was grateful. By mid-afternoon, the echo had returned to the rooms. I could hear the creak of the floor with every step, the hollow ring of footsteps on bare wood. The only thing left on the living room wall was a faint outline where the framed photo used to hang. I walked from room to room one last time, not to mourn, but to confirm. Everything I'd built, everything I'd brought in was now mine again. I left the keys on the kitchen counter beside a single note, not dramatic, just a line Carly would understand. I took what was mine. The rest is your problem now. Then I locked the front door behind me, called the storage unit to confirm delivery, and headed downtown. There was still one meeting left. Carolyn was waiting. Holden came back Sunday evening just after dark. I watched from the corner of the street, tucked in my car, lights off. His headlights swept over the front porch, but he didn't pause. He still thought it was his. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. It didn't take long. Within seconds, I saw the light from his phone flicker across the empty windows. No glow from the overhead bulbs. I'd had the utilities cut that morning. Nothing dramatic, just business. His voice carried out through the night air. "What the hell?" I imagined him spinning in circles, waiting for the familiar blue of the sofa, the hum of the fridge, the low murmur of the soundbar under the TV. But there was nothing, just echoes and empty space. Then he would have turned toward the wall above the fireplace, and there it would be, taped carefully to the spot where the flat screen once hung. "You own 4 walls. I kept everything else." I'd printed it in bold, signed it with a flourish, and walked away. A car pulled up behind him. Not Carly's, a dark sedan, clean, quiet. A man in a gray jacket stepped out, carrying a slim briefcase. He rang the bell once before letting himself in. That was Mr. Kessler, from the land trust Robert had established years ago, the trust that now legally owned the plot Holden was standing on. He didn't raise his voice. I knew that about him. He simply handed over the letter. "Sir," he said, "as of this morning, the foundation you're standing on no longer belongs to you. I'm going to have to ask you to vacate the premises. You're trespassing on protected property." I couldn't see Holden's face, but I could picture it. That stunned, silent confusion he used to have when he broke something as a boy and realized it couldn't be fixed. Only this time, there was no one left to clean up after him. I started the car and drove away, the street behind me swallowed in silence. Carly would be calling soon, and I already knew what I'd say. Carly's call came first. I didn't answer. Then it was her mother, voicemail, something about misrepresentation and unstable family dynamics. I listened long enough to hear her say the wedding was postponed indefinitely, and then I deleted it. By Tuesday, Holden called from 3 different numbers. The last one I picked up. He didn't start with anger, not this time. "Mom," he said, voice tight and too careful. "Look, I know things got out of hand, but we need to talk. I need your help." I waited. "She's gone," he added. "Carly. Her parents won't even take my calls. They think I dragged them into some legal mess. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Still, I said nothing. "I was trying to build something," he said. "For us." "For us?" I asked, my voice low. "You served me an eviction notice." His silence cracked. Then came the pleading. "Mom, please. The lights are off. There's no water. I can't even get in the garage. The code's been changed." "I canceled the utilities," I said. "You're not listed on the land trust. Legally, you're a guest at best." "I didn't know," he whispered. "That's the problem, Holden," I said. "You never knew, and you never asked." He tried to pivot. Promises, apologies, the kind I'd heard before when he was 16 and wrecked the neighbor's mailbox, when he was 23 and drained a joint account to buy into a failed startup. Always needing to be bailed out, always expecting me to make the call, pay the bill, clean up the mess. But I wasn't that mother anymore. "You made this bed," I said. "Now you get to see what it feels like to lie in it without a cushion." He said something, then I don't remember what. I hung up before he could finish. Then I blocked his number. The next morning, I sat with Carolyn to finalize the sale of the house. By dusk, it was no longer mine, and I didn't regret a single thing. The mornings are quiet up here. There's a small porch where I sit with my coffee, legs wrapped in a wool blanket. The air still cool even in late spring. The sun rises slow behind the pines, spilling gold across the ridgeline. The only sound is the creak of the rocking chair and the soft rustle of leaves. No cars, no slammed doors, no sharp voices calling me selfish, just breath, just space. The cabin isn't large, but it's mine. No shared deed, no fine print, no one else's name folded between the paperwork, just mine. Robert and I had talked about it once years ago, during a camping trip when Holden was still in middle school. "Maybe when we're old," he said, "we'll find a little place in the mountains, somewhere no one can find us unless we want to be found." I found it on a Tuesday, bought it on a Friday, moved in the following week. My things from the old house arrived in one small truck. That's all it took. A life boiled down to what I'd bought, built, or carried myself. I arranged them in this new space, not as remnants of what was lost, but as pieces of what I chose to keep. Carolyn called to confirm the final check cleared. The house was gone now, sold, paid for, finished. I didn't feel victorious, I didn't feel cruel, I just felt done. The phone rang once that morning. Holden's name flashed across the screen, a number he must have borrowed from someone else. I let it ring, let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear another apology packaged in excuses. I'd heard enough of those to last a lifetime. Instead, I took another sip of coffee and watched the light slide down the hillside. The birds didn't care what I'd walked away from. The trees didn't ask what I'd lost. They only stood tall and quiet, like they knew exactly what it meant to survive. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain anything to anyone. I stayed on the porch until the light faded. Then I went inside and unpacked one last box, a wooden keepsake Robert had carved years ago. The lid creaked as I lifted it. Inside were old photos, yellowed ticket stubs, a folded letter in his handwriting. It was short, only 4 lines. "If you're reading this, it means the hard part's done. Remember, love isn't ownership. It's what's left when everything else is gone." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I closed the box and set it on the shelf beside the window. Outside, the first stars had started to appear, soft, quiet reminders that endings can look a lot like peace. I breathed in the mountain air, clean and cold, and finally felt what I'd been searching for since the day the kettle clicked off. Not anger, not grief, just freedom. It had taken losing everything I thought I needed to remember who I actually was. No more papers to sign. No more apologies to give. No more waiting for someone else's approval to take up space. This was mine, all of it. The next morning, I brewed coffee the same way I always had. The sound of the kettle clicking off filled the cabin, but this time, it wasn't followed by footsteps or an envelope sliding across a counter. Just quiet. I poured the water, stirred, and smiled at the steam curling toward the window. Somewhere out there, Holden was probably still trying to make sense of what had happened, trying to find the loophole, the exception, the way back in. But there wasn't one. You can't rebuild trust on the ashes of betrayal. You can only start again on new ground. And that's exactly what I'd done. I walked outside, barefoot on the porch, mug warm in my hands. The horizon glowed soft pink and gold. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel displaced. I felt home.